Okay, welcome to the webinar. I am Rixa Ullman, Executive Director of the Management Society, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We're very pleased to have Jeanette Bennett present to us on creating women, how to turn your skill into business opportunities. A few housekeeping items before we get started. The audio portion of the presentation can be heard through your speakers on your computer. However, for those preferring to call in, you can choose that option on the screen to the right, on the panel to the right of your screen. During the presentation, all attendees will be muted. That means that you can hear us, but we can't hear you. This is in order to deliver a clear presentation to all that attend. You can send me messages during the presentation using the chat function on the control panel to the right. In addition, many of you asked questions as you registered, and we've looked at those questions, and Jeanette will be addressing some of those questions and problems and issues that you indicated during the presentation. Although she can't address every single one individually, I know they've given her great insight into the challenges you're facing and the questions you have. I certainly hope by hearing her experiences, it will help you as you work through your own. Again, let me welcome our presenter and introduce her to you. Jeanette's the founder and editor-in-chief of Bennett Communications, where she's primarily focused her pen on Utah Valley Magazine, Business Q, Utah Valley Bride Magazine, and Prosper Magazine. She earned a bachelor's and master's degree in journalism from BYU. She's moderated gubernatorial debates and numerous panels, been featured on HuffPost Live, as well as Utah-based television programs. She leads a staff of 15 writers, designers, and sales reps from her Orem, Utah office. She's very active in promoting faith, family, and motherhood at the United Nations. You know, Jeanette has a love-hate relationship with deadlines, half marathons, and the stock market. But she has a love-love relationship with glossy pages, watching her kids play sports, and enjoying Utah's canyons. Jeanette serves as a Stake Young Women president and considers herself a cheerleader for young women. She and her husband, Matt, are both native Idahoans and are raising their publishing company together, as well as their 5 children, including their first missionary who is serving now in Mexico. We really appreciate her taking the time to talk with us today. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to turn this over to her and allow her to share her screen with you. Hold on just 1 minute while we take care of that. Okay, if you'll share your screen with us, Jeanette, we'll be good. Thank you. I think we're ready to go. Let me just unmute you. Here we go. I think you're on mute.
There we go.
There we go.
We're good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rixa. I'm excited to be here today on this webinar with all of you. I think if it's working right, you can see me. I can't see myself or you right now with the screen that I'm looking at, but I'm excited to be with you. I wish I could see what all of you are doing right now. I'm sure some of you are feeding toddlers and some of you are on a lunch break or at school or your home or apartment. So I'm excited about the topic today because it's one that I'm passionate about and I love to talk about. I love to talk to young women about the future ahead of them, and I like to talk to women my age, I'm 42, about some of their goals and dreams as well, and some of the things that have gone well, and maybe some things that didn't turn out like they planned. And so this is a fun topic today. I also really loved reading your questions because it gave me insight into some of the things that you're facing and thinking about, which are similar to my own. Rixa, does that screen look okay, or can you see my GoToWebinar panel? I'm worried that that's showing up. If I put that over there, hopefully that works. Okay. All right, so creating women. How are we going to turn our skill set into business opportunities? So I wanted to share, first of all, my story, what I envisioned and what has happened in my life, and then share some tips. And along the way, answer a lot of your awesome questions, and then answer a few more at the end. So first of all, what I envisioned for my life involved a family. I pictured myself being a mom. I grew up as one of 7 children, And I pictured myself getting married to a BYU student, of course, and raising, I even pictured 5 children. And this is how my family looks today. So I did have 5 children. I pictured 3 boys and 2 girls. I got 3 girls, 2 boys. So I actually got kind of close on what I pictured my family to be like. But I planned on that. You know, I grew up going to Young Women and talking about being a mom and the future that that would hold for me. But I also envisioned a career, or well, at least an education. This is me in 2nd grade. My family didn't always buy the school picture, so this was one year, I think it was 2nd grade, where I got my school picture, and so that's one of my, I guess, favorite pictures of me when I was little, and just thinking about the possibilities that I had in my head at that point. And you know, I pictured graduated from college. That was never a consideration. I was going to go. I was going to get my bachelor's, and I did end up getting my bachelor's and master's. And so I had these 2 sets of plans. You know, I planned to be a mom, and I planned to get an education and perhaps pursue a career in my field of interest. So this is the family I grew up in. My parents, my dad's a school teacher, who retired now, and my mom, Carol Waite, teaches at BYU, Idaho. So this was us with the first 5 girls in a row, and then there ended up being a boy and a girl in the end as well. My mom made all these dresses, so a traditional mom, did wonderful mom things, fixed our breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and dinner was always on the table at 5:30, and she was a wonderful mom, and she was my example of motherhood, and she didn't work outside the home when I was growing up. Along the way, I had a lot of things that led me to love journalism, and one of them was this show, 8 is Enough. My husband's a good gift giver, and he gave me this cast photo of 8 is Enough for my birthday a few years ago. Signed on the back and stuff. But in this show, 8 is Enough, which if you're younger than I am, you have no idea what this is, but the dad and the daughter worked at a newspaper, and I thought it was super exciting to see the synergy of a newsroom, the excitement, and how every day was different. That was one of the things that led me to journalism. I also job shadowed a newspaper reporter in Idaho Falls, where I was growing up, and that got me excited about it too. And so when I was little, I would play journalist. My older sister would play school. She became a teacher. And I would play journalist and report the weather and all this stuff, and that ended up really influencing me. So then when I went to college, this is me as editor of the Daily Universe and at BYU. And I worked my way through college. I always had at least one job, and one of those was always working on the student newspaper at Rick's, which is now BYU Idaho, of course, and BYU. I was heavily involved in student publishing. And I learned so much. I had a great experience there. I learned a lot about leadership, a lot about myself. I wrote a lot of interesting articles. That's the thing about journalism, is you learn something new every day. And so I really tried to make the most of my time on campus. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that I had. So then along the way, I met my future husband. We actually met in junior high, but we didn't date in high school or junior high. We didn't date till after his mission. And we were living in separate states for most of our dating and engagement years, which, imagine that, you know, without texting and things, it was pretty tricky. But we ended up getting married. When we got married, which was 1995, I had a semester left, and Matt had 3 semesters left to finish our bachelor's degrees. On this day that we got married, I thought we had so much in common. We were both pursuing journalism degrees, so that was common, and we both grew up in Idaho, and we both had large families, and both had testimonies and similar goals. But I soon found out we actually were quite different as well. So this is a picture of us. We were just going to take this nice picture. We were testing some lights for a magazine story we were doing, and he sat there like a normal person, and I jumped like a not normal person. And that's kind of indicative of our relationship sometimes, is that we do see things differently. We're not quite as similar as I supposed on our wedding day, but those differences have been a really huge blessing as we've been business partners and also parenting partners. And so I've learned, and I'm still learning, to really appreciate all those differences and things that he brings to the table that I really need. And he's been a huge part of my story as an entrepreneur. So this is us recently. You know, this is an example. I stressed about what to wear. Family picture days are stressful for me. Maybe you moms can relate. Trying to, do you coordinate? Do you match? What do you do? And 5 minutes before the photo, he picked this shirt out to wear. So, you know, it just shows the differences between Matt and myself, and maybe men and women in general. One of the differences between us is he's very artistic, and that has helped in our business. He's the one who, in the beginning, designed all the pages and took a lot of the photos, and really focused on the visual elements of the magazines that we create, and where I'm the word person and financial person, details, logistics. So as part of his artistic endeavor, he spends a lot of his free time doing art. And this is one of his carvings that he made out of rock. And this was a gift he gave me. So it's a symbol of a dolphin and an anchor. And the Latin phrase means hasten slowly. And this is symbolic of us. When he carved it, the dolphin was him and the anchor is me. And as we were talking about it last night, we thought about how that's actually, we flip-flop those roles at times. And at times I've been the dolphin and he's been the anchor and vice versa. So it's actually been a nice balance, but hasten slowly, kind of the contradictory nature of our relationship and our business. So that's an example of our differences. Here's my 5 children, and you can see that they're different as well. You know, my oldest here, he's the highest one. He's the one on the mission. He's your classic firstborn. He's very exact. He's type A, straight A student. Things are black and white to him. My daughter, my second oldest here in the white, she's a performer. She's got her hands out. She's excited. My middle child has got his arms outstretched saying, notice me, notice me. You know, he's the middle child. And then Lindsay with her head thrown back, she's our super athletic one. She's just kind of go for it, just be silly. And then Lola, who's my caboose, she'll be 4 or 5 next month. She's looking at all of them, trying to learn from them. And that just kind of shows the differences in a family. And I think a family, and the reason this relates to business, is a family is a great foundation for business, because all the skills you need in business, you exercise every day in a family. If you've ever tried to negotiate with a 4-year-old, you are a great negotiator, or at least you know that you're not. You know? So those skills just come in handy in a family. The compromise, you know, if your whole family gets in the car and you're like, where should we go to dinner? There's compromise involved, you know, how can we get close to a win for everybody here? And so family has been a great business prep for me, and especially being a mom. And I love all these kids. Right now they're ages 19, my oldest, down to 4, almost 5. And so these are my business partners. These are my people. And I've learned to really appreciate all the differences. And even going back to college, this is my best friend from college, Tracy. And you know, on the left was a mall photo booth when we were being silly, and then the right is at my home a few months ago, and she came to visit, and just we're so different. And as we talked about it, you know, as we look back, she feels like I kept her in school, and I feel like she helped me have fun. And so it was that great balance. And so life and business is a combination of people that are different around you. And this plays true in our church lives as well. This is I'm a Stake Women's president. This is my presidency plus our 3 camp committee members, and these are the 7 of us. And I feel like I have 3 big pieces to my life, just as you're starting to get to know me on this webinar. So I have my work life, which we'll be talking a lot about today, so the magazines and the publishing side. I have my family, my 5 kids and husband. And then I have my church life. So those are my 3 big buckets right now. And it's a busy, full life trying to keep them all afloat. A lot of you ask questions about finding the right balance between church and work and family, and that is a great question with no easy answers that I relate to you. I relate to the questions you're asking, and they're questions that I deal with and ask myself about every day, and sometimes get out of balance. It's easy to identify when you're out of balance. It's hard to always solve that. But that's a little bit about my story. Now I want to get into some business principles, some tips about creating a business or deciding whether to or not, and tell you a little bit more about my story along the way. So my first tip is take a selfie. Selfie was the word of the year a couple years ago, but basically what I mean by this is start with who you are, who you know. Like take a really close look at who you are, what skills you do have, what are the blessings of your situation. If you're considering starting a business, or maybe you have started a business, these are, you know, you naturally go through this process. For me, when I was starting a business, which was shortly after Nathan was born, so when he was born, I was working at the Deseret News as a copy editor. Up until I went into labor, I was working there, and I loved that job. And I thought I might go back. I didn't know. I didn't know if I would or not. And then I had him, and I didn't want to go back. I wanted to be with him, and he was such a sweet baby, and it was, I became a mom at 23, and I wanted to stay home with him. But then I wanted and needed to earn a living, and I had skills. I had just finished a master's degree. I had experience working at the Deseret News and the New Era magazine and Utah Business Magazine, and I had these skills. And so the blessings of my situation were that I did have skills. I also had a husband with similar skills. He graduated in journalism, like I mentioned, and had different skills than I did. Here's what I didn't have. I didn't have money, and I didn't have a mom or mother-in-law around to help a lot, you know, with the children. So as you are deciding, do you want to start a business or not? A lot of you ask questions about that. Look at what you have. Some of you might have the blessing of family nearby to help you. Some of you might have financial means. Some of you might be in a situation where you really don't need to earn money. This is going to be more of a labor of love or a personal development pursuit. Some of you may have all your kids in school. And I don't want to say that's a blessing, but there are some pros to that. And so just look at your situation, you know, and figure out what you have going for you. What could you work around? If I didn't have a husband who was in this business with me, my plan, my business would be very different, because I wasn't desiring to have a full-time nanny and be at work all the time. I was desiring to run this business with my husband and mix family and work all together. And so I took a look at my situation, and that helped me make a decision about how to move forward. So this was me when we decided to start our magazine, which was the year 2000. So you can see I really needed a hair color. This was before the ombre style ombre has been in the past few years. This was not then. This was, I desperately needed some hair dye, wearing white nylons. I look at this picture and I think, wow, she has no idea what's ahead of her. But it's sort of awesome too that we don't always know what our journey will entail. I think it's awesome. We took this picture. This was my editor's picture of our very first magazine. And we took this at the park. My husband took this picture. We had our 2 kids in the car asleep while we were doing this. And so it's kind of a throwback for me to see that. The very first thing we did before we launched Utah Valley Magazine, which is maybe what our business is most known for, is I sent out a newsletter, and this is it. I found the original newsletter I sent out back in 1997, right when I became a mom. Or I guess it was 1998, a few months later, when I made this newsletter saying, hey, I can help you edit, I can write a newsletter for you, I can do it. And we named the company Bennett Communications. It just kind of came into existence. I hadn't registered it with the state or done anything official yet, but this was my first attempt at starting a business. And I sent this to, I think I printed about 30, and I sent it to anyone I knew. So this was people in my ward, or parents of my friends, or parents of people I maybe dated, or just different people I knew in the community who owned businesses who might want me to do some editing or newsletters for them. And so I sent this out, and this was my first jump into being a businesswoman. And I got 3 responses back, and they were small projects, really one-time projects, but it gave me a little bit of confidence that maybe I could earn a living, maybe I could use my skills, maybe I could start a business. And I had never thought about being an entrepreneur until I became a mom. It really was the motivation for me, to be able to have some flexibility and control. And so this was the beginning of Bennett Communications, was this newsletter right here. So then the next piece of our business was we started this newsletter for high school journalism advisors. It's a very small niche, and basically the business model, the dream, was to send out these newsletters, a sample newsletter with a sales envelope, for people to subscribe to this newsletter service. This was before teachers had the internet, and so it was a way of telling those journalism teachers, helping them out, saying, hey, here's some ideas you could give your students of things to write about, people to interview. It was kind of like an AP wire for high school newspapers. And so this was our first real jump, other than that newsletter I just showed you, where we got a few little bites. And this is where I gained more confidence, because this was a small project, but we put $5,000 on a credit card to print these newsletters and to mail them to every high school in the country, which was 10,000 high schools. We hand-stuffed the envelopes in my parents' basement. It was, you know, a true startup type experience. It was excruciating to stuff that many envelopes. organize them by zip code. But this project is how I learned the sales tax rules, bulk mail, permits, usage. I opened my business account, got registered with the state. We could never have lived off this project. I think on our best year we made $15,000, but it gave me confidence. This project gave me confidence, and so I remember our first subscriber was Patty Kennedy from Seattle, who I should really track down and send her a bouquet of roses or something. It was awesome to get that first subscriber and feel like, wow, maybe we're in business. Maybe this is going to work. So that came out the first one came out in 1998. This was our first issue of Utah Valley Magazine. So after we did that newsletter, we had a little bit of confidence, and we decided we're gonna go for it. We're gonna start a magazine, and we were excited about this idea. We had lived in Utah, going to BYU, and felt that Utah County, which is the Provo-Orem area, this county south of Salt Lake County, didn't have a magazine, and we didn't know at the time that other people had started magazines, and I'm glad we didn't know that, because we felt excited that it would work. Now I'm looking at this first issue and I can see everything wrong with this cover. The use of text, the Photoshop work, it's not ideal. But at the time it was super exciting to get off the ground and print this magazine and have it be sent out. Along the way, we started other titles. So we started Business Q, Q's for quarterlies. This is another magazine that we do for the Utah County area. So it's about business owners here. And so those are our advertisers, and that's our audience there. And then we also have Utah Valley Bride. And I kind of like this one because Utah Valley Bride, so that's on the left there, Rachel Parcell. At the time was Rachel Scala. She was a bride in that magazine. And she's another one who has started an awesome business, and we ended up featuring her on the cover of Utah Valley Magazine. She's a social media blogger, fashionista. She's a big deal, has nearly 1 million Instagram followers, and has a lot of power in the fashion space. And so she's another one who really took an inventory of herself, took a selfie, and decided, hey, I love fashion, I like to take pictures, I have good connections with the manufacturers, and she got off the ground, first of all, just showing clothes for free and then charging $20, and now charging a lot more than that, building a really big business. So it's been fun along the way as we've started our different magazines to meet people who have followed their dreams as well. So as part of this take a selfie idea of figuring out what you have to offer, what are the blessings of your life, what are the things you have going for you, and maybe what are the challenges. But as part of that, I would suggest thinking, this is my young woman hat coming on, but I really think it's true too, is to look at the young women values. So I know, if you're LDS, if you grew up going to young women, you have said these values a gazillion million times, and maybe you've said them without thinking about them. But I think these are really business principles too. When you're thinking about should I, can I, will I start a business, these are things to keep in mind. It takes a lot of faith. If you feel directed, you feel great about starting a business, it will take faith to take those steps forward. And think about your individual worth. What is awesome about you? What are you bringing? Make sure you have the knowledge. Make sure that you're jumping in with wisdom and acquiring that knowledge. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Choice and accountability. As women, we have awesome choices these days. We can really choose our path. And I love being a woman, and I love being an LDS woman. And a lot of that comes down to choices. I feel like we have so many awesome choices. The doors are just wide open. But there are some consequences, good and maybe bad, to the ones that we choose. I've chosen to run a business and own that with my husband. There are flip sides to that. I had cottage cheese for dinner last night. It's not like everything is running amazing all the time. It's there's a give and take. So anyway, just a thought to think about those young women values in terms of starting, running a business, creating your journey in life. Don't forget about these beautiful and inspired values that I think can help us as women throughout our lives, to make sure we're doing things with integrity. And virtue is power, and to make sure that we're accessing that power that Heavenly Father wants to give us. He loves His daughters. So that's kind of my closing thought about taking a selfie, is to remember those values. So secondly, business in the front, personality in the back. Basically what I want to say is business matters. You need to understand the principles of business and your particular industry. But as you approach it, be yourself, be creative. There's lots of ways to do things, and that's what's cool about today, is that you can decide how to do it. You can do things 10% different than anyone else, 10% better, and maybe that's enough to set you aside. But you do need to know proper business principles. So I just wanted to review a few of those today that I think are universal. So first of all, a business principle is to be present, to give it your all of whatever you're doing now. And this can be hard as women because we are so good at multitasking. We can take a phone call, post on Instagram, change a diaper, finish an online class. We're pretty good at that, and yet I think we do ourselves a disservice by being so distracted. And so this first business principle I wanted to share is about being present. So for this example, I showed this magazine. This Prosper magazine is another one of the things that we do. It features direct sales companies, home-based business opportunities. And for this one, it was a really cool day, actually. We had these 5 Olympians all in one room together. Winter gold medal Olympians. So Micah Ruzioni from Miracle on Ice, Bonnie Blair, Dan Jansen, Nadia Comaneci, she wasn't a Winter Olympian, but an Olympian, and Bart Connor, so the gymnast there. We had them all together. And the thing that really impressed me, we were together about 2.5 hours or so for this photo shoot. They did not get their phones out, which is unheard of in today's world. How many of you have checked your phone 10 times since you've been on here? Probably all of you, and I can see my text blinking over here, and I'm thinking, okay, I can't look at those right now. We are just so distracted by our devices and by our children and by all the things we have on our to-do list. These people were present. And I have to think that one reason they were able to succeed and be at the top of their industry is that they did that. When they were at the gym or on the rink throughout their training, they must have been completely present. And that's how they were able to be better than their competition. So be present. Be present as much as you possibly can be in your business. Set aside time to work on only business. That's essential. If you're going to run a business, you have to treat it like a business, and part of that is giving it all of you at least some of the time. That might mean trading babysitting. That might mean, I don't know what that'll mean for you, but you need to figure out how to be present. Next business principle I wanted to mention is to communicate with happiness. So communication, of course, that's what my degrees are in, so I'm passionate about that. But also adding the idea of being happy. So this is one of the cover stories we did on the Provo mayor right now, John Curtis, who is loved. Everybody loves this guy. And I think it's because he's a good communicator and he's happy. And so I don't think people always even understand all of his politics, but they don't care. They just love him. They just support him because of the way he communicates. So as you're starting a business, as you're jumping back into your career, whatever you're in, communicate with happiness. If people send you a text or an email, try to get back to them. Use a smiley face. I know some business people say don't use emoticons, don't use smiley faces. I don't believe in that. I want to show my personality if I can, just so people know, hey, I'm happy, I get it, I like you. I like to add that to my communication. So I think that's a business principle, and it's one we practice at home and at church, and it's a real asset to be able to communicate clearly and be happy. Next business principle is to be bold and be persistent. So this is obviously Donny Osmond. He's the only person who's been on our Utah Valley magazine cover 2 times. And so the first time was in 2001, and we'd only done a few issues. And nobody knew who we were. I mean, I would call people and say, hi, I'm Jeanette with Utah Valley magazine, and they'd be like, Utah Valley State College? They were just confused, and no one knew who we were. And the most famous people didn't want to do an interview with an unknown source. So when I was trying to get that first interview with Donnie, someone told me where he lived, and I had this moment of bravery or stupidity or something, and I went and knocked on his door. And I honestly can't really believe that I did that. That's not really in character for me. But he answered the door, and he was on the phone, but he said, kind of just a second kind of a thing. And so I waited for him to get off the phone, and he agreed to do an interview, and we were able to feature him back in 2001. That was maybe one of my first breakthrough interviews with this new magazine that we had started. And so be bold. Do those things that kind of scare you a little bit. If you're really going to run a business or jump into a career or do something really big, it's going to take some moments of being outside your comfort zone. And also along with that, you want to be persistent. There are times things are just not going to work out perfectly your first go at it. I mean, that's going to be normal. But there's examples of that in the scriptures too. I like the example of when Nephi went back for the plates. Even though Heavenly Father was going to help him get the plates, it didn't happen the first time. He had to be persistent. He had to be creative. He had to go at it different ways. And I actually think that's a really cool business principle, is to just, if you have a goal, don't give up on that. Just keep working toward it. Just keep approaching it in different ways. And in your head, picture it happening for you. And then just slowly go after it again and again and again. And Donny Osmond himself is a good example of that. He's had an interesting career, and he's reinvented himself over and over again. So this interview I did with him this past year, he has a new furniture line. That's one of the things we wrote about. And that's scary. He's never opened a furniture business before, but that was something he was excited about. So he himself is an example of this business principle I wanted to share as well. So the next one is to believe in your choices, to just really be passionate about them. And I think this holds true whether your choice is to stay home with your children, or if your choice is to be in the workplace, or if your choice is to start a business. Make your choice, with choice and accountability we talked about, and then just believe in it. Just like love that it's your choice. So little story here. This is a local restaurant guy, Dave Tuamisto. He's started several things. He started Bajío, and he started Marley's, and right now he has a restaurant called Milagros in Orem, which is near my office here. Anyway, so when I interviewed him a few years ago, one of my first questions was, so Dave, what made you want to start what made you want to start a restaurant? And he looked at me like, that's a really dumb question, and he said, I think everybody wishes they could start a restaurant. And I looked at him, I am not a good cook. Anyone who knows you will tell you that, or knows me will tell you that. And I looked at him and I was like, I think everybody wishes they could start a magazine. And we both just kind of looked at each other and laughed, because we were both so excited about our choices, him being restaurants, me being magazines, that we just couldn't even imagine that someone else wouldn't want to be us for a day, And we were just excited about what we chose to do. And so whenever you make a choice, just go for it. Just own it. Just be proud of it. Don't second guess it. Just go for it and move forward in faith, and things will fall into place, or maybe they won't, and you'll pivot. And you'll find a new path. But anyway, I believe in making choices and then following through with them and feeling good about them and seeing those through. So, and I think that's an important business principle. And when we started our magazine, it's not a huge success right off the bat. You just have to keep moving, keep moving. One of the things that I was interviewing someone the other day, and I noticed around their office they had this same phrase, little piece of paper that was taped everywhere, and it said, "What's your win today?" And I thought that was really cool, and I came back to the office and told my staff about it, because sometimes our choices and our dreams are this big. What we really need to think about is, what's our win today? What's our choice today that's going to hopefully lead to the big choice, the big vision? What's your win today? I think sometimes it's good to break it down into those smaller chunks. So, business principle. Okay, the next one. Stop saying, but I'm too, ... You might say, I'm too young, I'm too shy, I'm too poor, I'm too busy. Try to stop saying those kinds of things, because I have interviewed people who are shy, young, poor, busy, and they have done things. They have accomplished their dreams. And so we need to be better about that. We need to speak positively. This is a cover story with Josh James, and this was actually a while ago. This is our business magazine. So Donny Osmond is the only one who's been on Utah Valley Magazine twice. Josh James is the only one who's been on Business Q twice. And when I first went to interview him, he started Omniture, which got bought by Adobe for $1.8 billion with a B. And Josh is younger than I am. But anyway, so when I first showed up at his business to interview him, I was walking in, and I saw this guy. This is I'd never met Josh before. I see this guy walking in the same time I am, and my thought was, he must be here to visit his dad. He looked super young. And then I get in there, and I tell the receptionist, I'm here to interview Josh James. Okay, it'll be just a minute. And in just a minute, they take me to the conference room. And this guy I saw in the parking lot is Josh James. And he's the kid I thought was going to see his dad. He was young. He went for it. I love that. I love that he didn't give excuses, and he's one of the biggest success stories in our community. and he's had multiple businesses. And so take things out of your vocabulary that are not supporting your choices. I think that we need to do ourselves a favor and do that. Next business principle, it's about team. Everyone I interview talks in the business world talks about their team. They have the right people on the bus, which is a phrase from Good to Great, a good business book if you're looking for one. And it's a true principle. This is Studio C, and they're not like your traditional business, right? They're an improv comedy group, and they do an amazing job. You've probably seen Studio C. If not, your kids have. They're a huge success and so fun. And after being around them, I interviewed them each separately for 45 minutes or so, and then we did a photo shoot all together. And I really saw how they're so much better together. The synergy between them is important. And so as you are deciding how to spend your time, if you're building your business, if you're getting a job at a bank, if you're building a co-op with the neighborhood preschool moms, whatever it is you're doing, it really is important to surround yourself with people, not necessarily exactly like you, but people who inspire you, people who elevate you. And you need a team. You need a team of people who you can support and that they can support you. It's really important. There's that old saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I tell my kids that, and I think it's really true. And so when we have a team that elevates us, then it's such a blessing. And we can help them and they can help us. So think about that with your team. This was me the day we reenacted sort of the Scott Sterling sketch that Studio C did. They were all really good sports about that. The next business principle is be positive. This is just so true. And it's obvious, right? I mean, everybody tells you to be positive, but it's a super important business principle, life principle, church service principle. Hillary Weeks, who's on the left, she was at a Relief Society function. She's a singer-songwriter. And at the Relief Society function, they told her, the speaker said, that we have 300 negative thoughts a day on average. And she was like, I don't know if that's true for me. And so she bought a clicker thingamabob, and she decided to count her negative thoughts for a week. And she did that for a week. And she realized that she was having a lot of negative thoughts. The dog barks too loud, the red light's too long, my daughter is ornery, all of these things. And she said by the end of the week, nothing about her life had changed, but she felt so down she hardly wanted to get out of bed. And so the next week she kept that clicker, but she counted positive thoughts. She had this idea, well, I wonder how many positive ones I have a day. And the more she thought about positive things, the more positive thoughts she had. And so by the end of that week, she felt so much better, even though, again, nothing about her life had changed. We really need to train ourselves to be more positive. And it doesn't take a clicker. You don't necessarily have to click away or count your thoughts, but we do need to train ourselves to have positive thoughts, to speak in the affirmative about ourselves. And as women, it's so easy to be hard on ourselves. We tell our teenage daughters not to do it, and then we do it. And it's really not helpful. It's not who Heavenly Father intended for us to be, obviously, so we need to be more positive. Every year I do this article on high school students who will change the world, so there's one of our covers about that. And the thing that I love about these high schoolers is they are all super positive. They come in and they're all super different. We have a mix of athletes and perfect ACT and service-oriented and some that have been through hardships, health hardships or otherwise. And so they're all super different. But when I ask them about their high school, they all give the same answer. And basically they all tell me that they go to the best high school in the whole community. And I think it's that positivity of thinking that they have the best situation that makes it so they are going to change the world. And so I just want to remind us to be positive. That's really, really important thing. In Alma, there's the law of restoration that Alma talks about, where whatever we send out into the world comes back. And it's, a principle of karma, where if we send out positive thoughts, positive things happen. It's a true principle. It's a business principle. It's a life principle to be positive. The next one is being excellent. So this is a picture of my employees, some former employees, current employees. We had a baby boom. I only have 15 employees. We're a very small company. And so to have 6 babies born to our staff in a year was pretty crazy. But what I found with my employees is when they're excellent, when I can't live without them, then when they inevitably come, when they're going to become a mom, and we have a lot of younger employees, so a lot of first-time moms, and when they come in and say, Jeanette, I want to work part-time, I want to work from home, they usually have a plan of something that will work for their family. If they're excellent, I am so much more flexible. because I think I can't replace you. You're impossible to replace, so I'll do what you want to do. Whereas if they're mediocre or easily replaceable, then I'm not as willing, you know, it's harder for me to justify kind of the crazy schedule and I'm not going to see you, but how do I, anyway. So the excellence thing is huge. And as women, I think we open a lot more doors when we're excellent. When our business partner, boss, whoever, when we've become so invaluable to them that they'll work around our schedule, it's just huge. It's just it's a business principle to be excellent. And the flexibility that we women crave and need will be more available to you. Okay, so we went over business principles. The next thing I wanted to talk about was you're never too cool for school. Basically learning, just being this curious person, finding people who can teach you throughout your life, just being someone who likes to learn. If you like Brian Regan, at the bottom there I put, be a learner of things. That's one of his kind of funny phrases. Look for ways to learn. So here's a picture. This is on the New York subway. I've been going back to the United Nations the past few years to the Commission on the Status of Women. Anyway, this is one of my trips back there. All the women in the picture are with me, or with the group, and this guy was sitting there. He was on his phone, which of course is a common sight, and I was trying to talk to him. I was just kind of trying to joke with him, see how he felt about being the only guy in the subway car or whatever. He didn't look up. He was just completely absorbed in his phone. And then this happened. Let me see if I can play this little video. Okay, so it was St. Patrick's Day, and we're sitting there on the subway, and the next stop, this whole bagpipe group of awesomeness comes on the subway, and all of a sudden that loud music, it united everyone in the subway. And that guy who wouldn't talk to me before, after these bagpipers got off at the next stop, then he was talking to me. We were engaged. And of course I was having such a good conversation with him, I didn't take a picture to illustrate the story. But the point is, I think we spend too much time looking at our phones when there are mentors and learning experiences right around us. If you're sitting at the playground, talk to the other person there, get to know them. There might be something you can learn from them, might be a connection that would be valuable to you in some way, or maybe you could be valuable to them. So to be curious, don't be so wrapped up in our phones. You know, we tell our teenagers not to do that, and then we do it, and it's hard. This is an interview I had with Elder Oaks, and he was it was the day before he was going to speak in priesthood session, the first time that it was going to be broadcast so that women could watch it. And he told me, he says, I'm going to be speaking hoping that women are listening, because he was going to be talking about the priesthood in priesthood session. And I thought that's so cool. That, you know, another reason it's so great to be an LDS woman right now is that we are learning so much about the gospel and about everything else. And so to be someone who is willing to learn and look for those opportunities. This is just an example of, we started an event called the UV50 where we highlight the 50 businesses in the county, fastest growing startups to watch, etc. And the only way we were able to start that event is by learning, by attending events and going, how do you throw on an event? I'm going to learn. I'm going to ask questions. So that was something that only came about because I asked and asked, and our first event wasn't that awesome, and hopefully it's gotten better year after year just because I've learned. I interviewed Ann Romney a number of years ago, and she's of course amazing. But one of the things I thought was interesting, so on my notebook, I had a yellow notebook. You can maybe see it under my laptop there. I'm a to-do list Nazi, and so I was making a to-do list on the way to the interview of the different things, because the very next day was youth conference, and I was, you know, in charge of it, and so I was writing these things down. But when she saw my notebook and she saw that it said youth conference, all of a sudden it opened up our friendship even more. She had a lot that she wanted to say and questions, and she had some great advice, and that was an unexpected little mentoring experience that I had just because we connected on that. And so be someone who asks questions, help other people, let other people help you. I like this picture here. This is from Trek a couple years ago. This is a guy in our stake presidency, awesome President Robbins, who's pointing out the mud. He says, you know, go around the mud. This will slow you down. And this is how we kind of need to be when there's other people, other women or men who are helping guide us through our journey, to really listen and pay attention so that we don't have to get down in the mud. Okay, love your reality. Here's the thing. I feel like a lot of times we see everybody's perfect reality, what we think is their perfect reality, when our reality doesn't look perfect to us. But that's the thing. We've got to learn to love what's real, what's really going on in our lives. This is a staff picture we took for our Christmas card. And I even typed "life is imperfect" and I misspelled imperfect, and I thought I'll just leave it. I didn't do it on purpose, but then I just decided to leave it. My little Lola, my little caboose child, she's in this picture. There's one of the chairs has an extra leg, and that's her leg. And she was screaming during this photo. And it's just, you know, that's just how life was. We took this after she was done with preschool, and I was trying to juggle things, and there she is in our staff Christmas photo that we sent out to our clients. Probably no one can see her leg, but when I look at this picture, I remember the sounds that of her unhappiness that day. That's life, right? Life overlaps, another part of reality. This is me proofing a magazine at girls' camp. We're about to do a skit with these silly socks. You know, the cotton candy machine's there. Life overlaps. When yours overlaps, just know that's real. That's what really, really happens. This is, you know, as part of that Donny Osmond story that I mentioned that we did earlier. We recreated a photo from 40 years ago at Sundance. Super cool. It was his idea. So they would come up and do that, and we were taking photos. The whole time I was thinking about, I'm going to be late to this Stake Youth Committee retreat, you know, because life just tends to overlap and things are sort of stressful. So in this picture, all I'm thinking is, okay, my ride's about here. They're going to pick me up for this Stake Youth retreat. So reality is pretty crazy, and just kind of accept that, I guess, and laugh about it. I'm still learning that. Here's one of our photos. We do this fab story every year about the most fabulous people, and every year we have a different theme. For some reason this particular year, I wanted to do bunnies. Now, I am not an animal lover, but I just thought it'd be fun. We had this magic theme, and I thought we needed live bunnies in this photo. And it's Darling with this gardener, this old man who is just the most charming person you've ever seen, and then two BYU athletes here with him. Well, here's the reality of the first photo that we took with this bunny. I'm just not good with animals. So that was our first try at the photos, you know, but then you only saw, or our readers only saw, sweet little bunny pictures. Just want to give you a feel that we think things might be perfect in other people's lives. They're not. This picture is going to be in our next magazine, this kid jumping. Well, it took multiple tries and multiple attempts to try and find the right jump, and this angle didn't end up working. So it's just, life is kind of, reality is kind of messy sometimes. Use what you have is another part of reality. You know, we were trying to do this cover photo with Ty Detmer, and this is what the cover photo ended up looking like. But he wanted us to meet him in a park, so I used this blanket that my mother-in-law made for one of my kids, and that ended up being our backdrop for the photo. You know, reality is just a little bit crazy sometimes. And sometimes we can be afraid, but our fears can actually be our strengths. This is Stephanie Nielsen. A lot of you probably follow her blog, Mimi Dialogues. And she's very inspirational, very awesome. And one of the things when we started the photo shoot, we were going to, and she wanted us to kind of, you know, she wanted to look beautiful in the picture, of course. We ended up loving this picture the most of all because it did show her scars. It did show some of the things that she was enduring at that time. And that ended up being really an amazing part of the story, was this particular photo and her vulnerabilities. So just be real. And as part of being real, what do you need to fuel? Do it. Like, if you need more sleep, get more sleep. If you need a swig cookie, you know, get the swig cookie. You've got to fuel. Tom Holmo, who's the BYU athletic director, he taught me that. His fueling strategy is to go for a walk every day. And so the interview took place on a walk. We walked up and down the Provo River Park Trail. And that was what he did to fuel. That was his reality. And so we need to take time to do that. We burn ourselves out too much if we don't keep ourselves fueled. So we've got to do that. The Timberly and Kalani Sitaki, the current BYU football coach, they got locked out. This is their photo shoot in front of their house. They got locked out. That's the reality. This was our cover that ran. The reality of it is, when I look at this cover, all I can think about is how their little kid locked them out of that front door. And the photo shoot ended with us figuring out how to get them in their house. And that's just reality, and sometimes we don't always see everybody's reality. We see our imperfections, but we just need to own it. One of the people I loved interviewing, Jane Clayson Johnson, who had an awesome career in broadcast and then became a mom. And she tells this story of how she ran into some colleagues that she had known at CBS News, and she was with her little kids. And the guy said to her, "Oh, just a mom now?" And she said, "No, I am a mother." She was very bold about the choice that she had made. And that's, whatever our reality is, I think we need to own up to it. And also we need to have fun with it. we were doing this interview with Mindy Gledhill, and she wanted to jump on the couch, and I just thought, she's having a lot of fun, I'm going to join her. And I didn't like the way my hair looked that day, and I wasn't prepared to be in the photo shoot, but sometimes we just need to have fun. So all in the family, this is my number 5, I guess, tip here, all in the family. Get your Quiver on board with your goals. A lot of you asked questions about working with family and how to balance that. And I still have a lot of questions about that, but it is important for your family to be on board. I like this from the proclamation. So it gives the roles of fathers and mothers, and then I like this sentence in blue here. In these sacred responsibilities, fathers and mothers are obligated to help one another as equal partners. And that looks different for different people. Matt and I take that pretty literally. We're pretty equal in distribution of work at home and at work. And for other partners, it will look different. But I take this to heart. I believe this to be true, and I believe that's how our Heavenly Father sees it as well, is that we help each other as equal partners, and we figure out what that looks like over time. This is a cartoon that my husband put on my desk. It's been several years, but I've kept it there. I think firing me would be a big mistake, mostly because we're married and we need the money. And so, working together, it's funny. It has its ups and downs. It has more ups than downs. For my husband and myself, it's been the only way that we would do it, because we have our kids, when they've been little, they've been at work a fair amount. They've taken naps here, and they've drawn on the whiteboards here. And then my husband and I take turns. We still have a child who's in preschool, so she gets done at 11:30 every day, and one of us picks her up every day. And so it's juggling that. We have a meeting every Sunday night where we map out the week, and what do you have, what do I have, and we juggle, 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 and for the most part we're able to do it ourselves, and sometimes we need a little help from other people. But it's been a blessing in our lives. Some of your questions asked about how do you work together without it ruining your marriage, basically. And for me, I think it's actually been a blessing. We make a lot of decisions in front of other people. In a staff meeting, for example, we'll make a decision where we're compromising. He and I might think differently about something. But when we're discussing it, then our staff's watching, and so we've learned to do those things unemotionally for the most part, and that has transferred to home as well. Like when we're making decisions at home, there's a pretty non-emotional, compromising type approach, and that has come from working together. And so that's been a blessing. The hardest part of working together has been that sometimes one of us still wants to talk about work at home, sometimes the other one doesn't. And so when that's the case, it's usually me that wants to talk about work more than he does. I'll have to say, okay, I have something I want to run past you. Let me know when you're in the mood. Talk about it. And so we try to do that. But a lot of you asked about boundaries between work and home. And honestly, we started our business from home, and that was awesome, and it was also really hard because I felt like we were always at work. I felt guilty walking out of the office. If the fax machine was going or the phone was ringing, if it was 8 o'clock at night, I still felt like I wanted to go in there and work. And so that was hard. Then when we got our first employees in our first office, that was also a hard transition, because then Matt would go to that office every day and I would be home, and I was used to having him to help me when I had to take a phone call and different things. So there's been adjustments all along the way, and we've had to communicate about that. It's adjusted every time we've had a kid. With all my 5 children, all of them, I've nursed them all for a year. They haven't taken bottles, and I feel like that's been, anyway, it's been awesome, but also hard because it's kept me connected to those babies. It's helped me keep my priorities straight. So when I've had babies, I've worked less, and then other times the pendulum has swung. Right now I'm working more than Matt is, and so we work that out. But it's been tricky, and if you have a partner, if you have a spouse who is gone 12 hours a day, you're going to have different challenges. You're going to have different maybe opportunities than I've had, and that's okay. We do the best with what we have. One of the things I loved about this interview with Neon Trees, so the frontman, Tyler Glenn, at the time, he talked about how his mom was their greatest supporter, and everyone in the band wanted to call his mom when something cool happened, like when they had the #1 hit or whatever. And I thought that's how families should be. We should be each other's biggest cheerleaders, and we want that from our husbands and from our kids, and so we need to do that for them as well and create this culture of support in the family, this culture of give and take. So here's me this is my 3rd child, Carson, at one of our offices. This is a common sight, baby in arms, laptop at my fingertips. We've involved the kids when we could. This is my boys. They're delivering Bride magazine, door-to-door distribution around BYU. That's been part of our family culture. You know, I grew up, my parents weren't farmers, but we lived among farms, and we have a farm of magazines. That's what I tell my kids. We grow words, and so they've helped us a lot with that. This is my daughter Haley. She helps with some of our events. It's fun to be with her and to train her. I hope that she'll work here with me more and more someday. So that's been kind of fun. But here's reality. Sometimes things don't go very well. This is my daughter on the way to preschool the other day. She got out of her seatbelt and she was telling me she didn't want to go to school. You know, and this is her older sister doing her hair a couple of mornings ago. You know, this is, and just, you know, I don't want to paint this glamorous picture. I want to show you, like, it's tricky. And if things are hard for you, I totally get it. This is our reality sometimes, you know. So kind of in summary, these were my 5 main points. To take a selfie, figure out what you have going for you. What are the blessings of your situation? What can you do? Second, business principles. You've got to understand true business principles. If you want to run a business, you have to think about it like a business and worry about the money and the supply and demand and all those things. Third, school, meaning just be curious, be a learner, be someone who seeks out mentors, read a lot, meet people. 4, love your reality, as messy as it is. And last, get your family on board as much as you can and express your dreams and goals to them and ask them specifically for what you need. For my family, like for my kids, I don't make their lunches. That's something that I've said to them. You know, we're all busy in the morning. A lot of times I've been up doing work for a few hours, so I need you all to make your own lunches. And that's something, you know, I tell them there's awesome things about being a Bennett and there's hard things about being a Bennett. And that's one of the things that they do, is they fix a lot of their own food and take care of a lot of their own things. And hopefully I haven't ruined them by doing that. Hopefully they've become resilient and they're able to take care of some things there. I love this quote from President Uchtdorf. This is one of the last things I wanted to share. The desire to create is one of the deepest yearnings of the human soul. No matter our talents, education, backgrounds, or abilities, we each have an inherent wish to create something that did not exist before. And if you feel that yearning to create, then it's our divine nature. It's back to those young women values. We have that just desire to create. We're creators. We create life, you know, with our beautiful children, and then we can create, if it's our right path, we could create a business or our journey, whatever that might be. And so I just encourage you all to follow those desires to create. Lastly, I just have, I think, maybe a couple of minutes to answer a couple of questions. I loved all your questions. I noticed a couple themes. One of them was based on fear. A lot of you asked about fear. And that's a natural thing, I think, but it's also something we've really got to deal with. You know, what is it you're afraid of? And move forward with that, just like we would tell our kids to. I think part of it is practicing doing hard things, saying yes to a hard calling, bearing our testimony when it's hard. Just the church gives us chances to practice hard things. But if fear is immobilizing you, that's something you really do need to work on and address. And another common theme was with time. And that's so true, and I have no easy solution. We all have limited time. But I do feel like if we're doing things that are truly what we're supposed to be doing, that our Heavenly Father will help us and at times give us extra time. So I love that. One of you asked who bakes the bread at your house. I thought that was a great question. The truth is, nobody does. We don't have homemade bread. My husband bought me a bread maker one time, and he figured out how to use it to kind of show me. And he made bread a few times. I've never used the bread maker. It's just, that's not my highest priority. So there's a give and take, and living the life that I feel like I've chosen and that's been right for me has meant other things haven't happened. I don't have the most organized laundry room, and I don't have dinner on the table every night at 5:30. And those are things I wish that I did, but those are trade-offs. And so I think as we prayerfully go about our particular journey and find out what Heavenly Father has in store for us and what we desire, what we truly desire, that things can work for us and we can find a way, just like I mentioned with Nephi earlier, or with the persistence that I've had at different times in my business. Good things can happen. It just comes down to priorities and really those young women values. You know, having faith, making choices, and then being accountable for them, and facing those consequences, good and maybe hard, and then moving forward with integrity. So I believe our hour is up. Rixa, is there anything else that you want me to cover before we finish here?
No, I think this has been great. It's been fascinating for me and introspective in many ways, because you think, am I being present in my job, or am I thinking there's something else I need to be doing or ought to be doing or should be doing, instead of taking what I have and really using my talents to be doing what I do best right now in the situation I'm in. And I think we all have choices, but we also have that choice to take what we have when we have it and do the very best. And you've given me some insights on that. I love that about being in a team and being excellent and believe in our choices. I think we have to stand up for that, because we often make our choices with a lot of thought and care, and then we start doubting that down the road. So you have to accept, I think, your own choices and work with that. But it's been a wonderful hour. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope our audience has. It's been a fun learning experience and fun to think about again and look at my own situation. I have recorded this. I will send a link out to everyone who registered for the webinar, so they'll be getting a link from it and they can go back and look at it, share it with those who weren't able to listen. And again, thank you so much, Jeanette, for taking this time with us and sharing your story and what you've done and helping us to think about what we can do better with our own situations. Thank you to our audience for taking your time out for this. And we hope you'll all be engaged in whatever's going on in your life, and be engaged in the Management Society. There's a lot of things going on all around the world in chapters that we have, and this is just one of the things that we're giving you right now. So have a great day, and thank you again.